Okay, good morning.
Just look up there.
I got it. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Janos. You don't have 100 degrees, I hope, like the rest of Europe.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have over 80.
Over 80 degrees. Okay, it's also
And will be much over 90s on Thursday.
okay. I'm sorry to hear that, but
He's always here, also here too.
stay cool. We had
Thank you, you too.
we had 3 very hot days last week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I always tell my students, if it's a hot, humid day, it only helps us think about what Avraham Avinu did. Avraham Avinu, it said, "V'hu yoshev Pesach ha'ohel kachom hayom." He was sitting outside the tent in the heat of the day, and what is the heat of the day? Chazal tell us that it was the 3rd day following his Milah. It was the 3rd day, counting the 1st day of the Milah. So on the 3rd day, there's the most pain, Chazal tell us. Kachom Hayom, where was Avraham Avinu? He was in Hebron. Hebron is a hot day every summer. It starts in April and it doesn't stop until November. So it's hot, much hotter than it is here in the summer, much hotter than it is in Europe now. That's the normal. So you can imagine, Kachom Hayom means HaKadosh Baruch Hu added more heat. He put the oven on higher just to make Avraham not want to go outside, or on the other side, to give him more schar for going outside in that heat to look for people to do chesed to. And we're actually going to talk about Avraham Avinu for a few minutes in the first part of the shiur. And it's about animals, but we're going to get to the animals. We're going to talk about water. The Torah tells us that after Miriam dies, and this is a very sad parsha because Aaron dies and Miriam dies in this parsha. After Miriam dies, V'lahaya mayim la'eda, and there was no water for Bnei Yisrael, no water for the flock of Israel to drink. Chazal tell us, and Rashi brings this down. Tanya Amar Rav Yossi bar Rav Yehuda. The Gemara teaches us. The Brisa says, "Be'er nitan liYisrael b'schus Miriam." The well, the traveling well in the wilderness, was granted to Israel in the merit of Miriam. Chazal tell us because Miriam stood by to see what will happen to her brother in the teva that Yocheved put Moshe in back in Mitzrayim when all the males had to be killed. She refused to kill her son. She put him into the water, and Miriam stood by. And the schus Miriam, you could see that she had a great schus of water. She also, Chazal tell us that the nation waited for her for 7 days. Imagine that. The whole nation waited on its way to the promised land, waited because of that waiting that Miriam did. But you can see she's associated with water. So, Mesa Miriam, the Stalek HaBe'er, when Miriam died, the well stopped, the well ceased. Shenema Vatama Sham Miriam, the pasuk before, Vatama Sham Miriam, she dies, Vatikaber Sham, and she was buried there, Balahaya Mayim La Eda, and there was no water for the Eda. So the Torah Tamima brings this down and questions. And I mentioned Avraham Avinu, and it says, he brings a Gemara. Whose schus did we get these things for? So the Gemara says, "Bishar she'amar Avram lamalachim." You remember in that story by the hot day in Hebron that the malachim, that the 3 guests came to Avram in the schar, the merit that Avram told the malachim, "Yukach no ma'at mayim, please let's have water brung to you. Let's have water brought to you I was brung to this country when I was 2 years old on a boat. Let's have water brought to you. Because of that water, Miriam, the Gemara says they got this fuss then. They merited the be'er of Miriam. So whose is it? Is it Avram's schus? Is it Miriam's schus? And the Maharsha in the Gemara says, what does it say over here that it's the schus Miriam? I just read you the Gemara that it's the schus of Miriam. It's the schus of Avram Avinu. You know what he says? The Maharsha has an answer. Maharsha said, Ilu b'schus Avram levad, if it was only for the sake of Avram, that he brought the water to the Malachim, he had the water brought to the Malachim, we would have had the water. It would have been a schus to once have the water. So Bnei Israel would have been thirsty in the Midbar. That schus of Avram, they would have found water one time. They would have had water. The Rak b'schus Miriam, only because of Miriam's schus, zachu l'chol meshech 40 shana sheyihiyu shahayu b'midbar. They were zocha to have the water the entire time in the wilderness. And the Torah Tamima says that, let's look at the words, 40 years. He says it wasn't really 40 years because most of the time they were set in one place. It was only when it means during the span of the 40 years in the desert, when they needed water, that's the schus of Miriam. Okay. But the Torah Tamima says, on the Maharsha, and the Maharsha is back in the 15th century. The Torah Tamima is 1920, 1930. In fact, the Torah Tamima is the son of the Aruch HaShulchan. You've heard of the Aruch HaShulchan, Baruch HaLevi Epstein from Dvinsk. The Torah Tamima was in Minsk, and he actually was in Yeshiva University in 1939. They had a lot of Rebbeim, a lot of the European Rebbeim. In fact, the European Rebbeim, Rav Soloveitchik, Rav David Lifshitz, they're all from European, all from Europe. They didn't have a job for the Torah Tamima. They had no shiur to give him. Imagine that. They had obviously, if they knew the brach that was happening, they would have found something. But they didn't have something to offer him, so he went back to Europe. And he died in 1941, right before the Germans got to his town. He would have been killed, but he died naturally in 1941. He says, I don't understand the Maharsha. Okay, it's not Avram's. Avram would have given it to you once. Miriam, you have the schus of the entire traveling in the desert. He says, it's shver. It's shver. It's the chukim means it's pressure. It's hard to accept the Maharsha. Why? The mehecha tesa. Where does he know? Lahavdil schus Miriam yoser miskus Abraham. To make Miriam's schus greater than the schus of Avram. Because of Avram Avinu, we got water once. We would get water once. Because of Miriam, we get the traveling water, the traveling well. He says, where do you get that from? I'll say the Maharsha has to answer that. I don't have an answer for the Maharsha, but it's nice to see the Torah Tamima take the Maharsha to task. Take the Maharsha to task. And the Torah Tamima says, B'li nira, and he says, I don't think that's the pshat. What's the pshat? That because of that, Zachul Be'era Shel Miriam, because during Miriam, because of Miriam's schus, they got the Be'er. He says, no. What it means to say, because of what Abraham did by giving the Malachim water, he didn't know there were Malachim, because of having water brought for them, he was Zocha to have progeny, that from the progeny came Miriam. And the Torah Tamima develops this, and he says, the same thing, it says that Avram Avinu, what else did he give them in that meal? Avram gave them a tongue. It was considered a very delicacy back then. I like a tongue sandwich, but it was considered a real delicacy. Some people, right, some people don't like it. He gave them chema v'chalav, vayikach chema v'chalav. So, the famous, he brought butter and milk, and he also ben habakar, and he brought the meat, the cattle. And Chazal tell us, number one, it was before Matan Torah. So there was no Isur to eat basar v'chalav. But first, chema v'chalav, first he brought them milk and butter. And afterwards, he brought them ben habakar sher asa. Okay. And the Torah tells us he got schus for that too. The Gemara tells us in the same place. In the schus of that, zachul laman, they got the man. So did they get the man because of Avraham Avinu again? He says no. This is how we understand it. Because of what he did, that Avram did, because of every chesed that he did, he was zocha to have children, progeny. Sheyatzu mehem Moshe v'Aharon u'Miriam. And Aaron, because of Avraham Avinu, put a shade around them. The Gemara tells us they were zocha, his children, Bnei Yisrael was zocha to the anonei kavod in the desert, the clouds of glory to shade them. So again, it's Avram's. No, it's not Avram's schus. Avram did something because of that. Had the schus to have children. That from them came Avraham, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. The schus of Moshe was the man. The schus of Aaron was the anonei kavod, was the clouds of glory. The schus of Miriam was the air. So that's how he answers that schus. Yes. You see, you ask a question, what did Abraham do wrong? What did Yishmael do wrong that he ended up being Yishmael? Abraham was given the bracha to be Av Hamon Goyim, father of many nations. There was no need at that time to have nations that come to destroy Israel and come to hate Israel. That was the choice of the progeny. Avram's mandate was to be the father of many. But Hashem said to Avram, Ki b'Yitzchak yicharei l'chazara, you're going to have zera, progeny, continued progeny, or legacy is the term, through Yitzchak. So it's not a question on Avram. Avram raised his son, I'm sure, well. Sarah saw that something was wrong with the way Yishmael was tzachek. He was making, he's a comedian. He wasn't taking life. He was taking life frivolously. And Sarah said, we got to do something here. But it wasn't Avram's fatherhood. It was Yishmael's. How many times you say, what did the parents do? Sometimes it's not the parents. Sometimes it's the home. I'll tell you a quick story. I taught at a yeshiva. I could mention the name. It's 25 years ago, Torah Academy of Brooklyn. I taught there for 2 years. TAB. Torah Academy Brooklyn was a last resort yeshiva, like Waterbury, like some other yeshivas. A last resort yeshiva for kids who are off the derech behaviorally. So we'll use a name, Weintraub. It wasn't a Weintraub. So there was one kid there. Okay, tough kid. And I remember telling the mother when she came, it was a question about regents. And I said to her, Miss Weintraub, whatever the name, with all due respect, your son's problem is not academic. It's really not. Will he be ready? You have to take care professionally of whatever is his problem, because that's really the key. If that is taken care of, everything else will fall. And the kid ended up being a good kid. The kid ended up years later staying on the derech and fine. The mother had another son the year later in the school. And I said, oy vey, if there's one kid that the family has in a school like that, I feel sorry for the family, but it's the kid. If there's two, something's with the family, that they're doing something in their raising, to have two children have to follow that path, something is up. So Avram, It's not Avram's fault. Look at he has Yitzchak. It's Yishmael's fault.
It's sometimes I say, that's just life. This is life. Like this, then everything is going to come out good.
No, it wasn't meant. It wasn't meant to come out good until Yaakov moved up. It wasn't meant to come out good. All right, but here's today's coup de grace. Here's the beautiful part of the lesson from the Eish Tamid. That's from Yisrael Meir Druk. Yisrael Meir Druk in Israel, and he's prolific Rosh Yeshiva. And okay, so you'll tell me if you like this. The pasuk says there was no water. There was no water for the flock. So what happens? By Yorev Ha'am im Moshe. So by Yorev, they started fighting with Moshe. By Yomru Leimor. This is what they said. V'lu govanu. Had we only died, like our brethren died, the brethren by Korach, which just happened recently. If we only died like they did. Why did you bring the flock of Hashem to this desert, to die there? Anachnu uve'ireinu, us and our animals. You brought us out here to die. You tell me what the problem is. I'll read the words again. You brought us to this desert, Lamus Sham, to die there. Anachnu uve'ireinu. Tell me what's wrong with the pasuk. Anachnu uve'ireinu, us and our animals. Tell me what's wrong. It's an obvious question. I'll read it again. Lama habeisem es kahal Hashem. Why did you bring the congregation, the assembly of Hashem, El Hamidbar Zeh, to this desert, Lamusham, to die there? Anachnu, us and our animals, uve'ireinu. Okay, they're not on the same plane. Okay, you're on the right track. You're on the wrong. You didn't get off at the right station. Keep going. Okay, Anachnu means us, our children, uve'ireinu, and our animals. I'll say it louder as I say it in my classroom. And our animals. Okay, it should be obvious that this is what's bothering them. They're about to die from thirst. They're going to die from thirst. They're worried about their animals. If they die, the animals are useless to them. And the Torah doesn't have extra words. So if they die, yeah, the animals will die too, but what difference does it make? If they die, the animals are useless to them. So why does the Torah say, Anachnu uve'ireinu?
Maybe they're implying that maybe they did something wrong, but what did the animals do to deserve that?
Oh, you're back on the right train. Excellent. Okay.
I tried.
So he says, and he makes the question even bigger. He says, is it really that important to mention fear of death of the animals when you're talking about the pikuach nefesh of human beings? Is it really even in the same league to mention the animals? Okay, so he says, what must we say? You must say that the Bnei Yisrael coming with a real taina to Moshe. They're coming with a real reason, or else it doesn't make sense. And they're saying, yes, we don't have stus. We may not have stus. We may be guilty, but at least Hashem should save us because of Be'irenu, our animals. So how do we understand that? They don't have stus, but let's be saved because of our animals. Okay, ready for a story. The gracious Rabbi brings a story of what happened with Alexander the Great, Alexander the Great of Macedonia. Alexander Mukdon, as the Gemara says, Mukdon, Macedonia. And here's a beautiful story. He once went to a place in Africa. It says Medinos, Africa. That's the medrash. He went to Africa. It wasn't far from Greece. And he was, I'm translating, he was received respected, received. And he saw that this place that he went to was living very peacefully, and they had everything they needed. So he wanted to see, how do they judge things? How does the king sit in judgment? What do they do? I'll tell you this medrash the way it says. We can spend hours dissecting the medrash, but I want to get to the point. So I'll tell you the medrash quickly. Two people come into the court for the king to judge. One of them says, I sold my land to this person. And you know what happened? The person dug, and what did he find? He found treasure. And he says, it belongs to him, not to me. Interesting. It belongs to him, because when I sold it as is. And it's not mine. It belongs to and the other one, the buyer says, yeah, I bought it, but it's not mine. I didn't buy the treasure. It belongs to the seller. Imagine, they're backwards, right? That's an interesting part of the medrash. They're backwards. I don't want it. Give it to him. Give it to him. Could you imagine that? Things are upside down. Each one is tining. Each one is claiming for the benefit of the other. Maybe that's why they're doing so well in that country. So, number one, Alexander the Great is listening to this, and he never heard, the medrash says, he never heard a court case like this. He never heard two litigants coming with the backward plea. And he wanted to see what the king is going to do, the local ruler. All right, so the king sitting in judgment, and here's sort of a Solomonic. No, not split it down the middle. That's too much, King Solomon. Split the baby. No, he says even better. And there'll be a baby involved, you'll see. He says to one of them, do you have a son? Do you have a daughter? Let them get married and give them the money. Oh. Not bad. So you could imagine, right? Then they'll have children. So you could imagine whether this story really happened or it's a medrash to teach us, it's okay, but it's a good story. So the king calls over Alexander the Great. And the king said to Alexander the Great, did you like what I did? Do you agree? Is it yafeh, danti? Did I judge nicely? Is it pleasing? And Alexander the Great, smart man, said, yafeh, interesting, nice. The king said to Alexander the Great, what would you have done? And Alexander the Great says, if this happened to me, we would have chopped both of their heads off and taken the treasure. Period. So the story continues. The king said to Alexander the Great, do you have sun? Does the sun shine in your land in Greece, in Macedonia? Does the sun shine? Said yes. Do you have rain? Does rain fall? Says yes. King said to him, are there animals? Is there cattle? Are there livestock? He goes, yes. So the king said to Alexander the Great, now I understand why there is rain in your land, why there's sun, why there's livestock in your land. I understand why there's rain and why there's sun. Because you guys yourselves, you don't deserve any beneficence from sun and you don't deserve anything good, but because of the animals that you have the sun, You have the rain. You have life because of the animals. Okay, so let's take it further.
Right.
We say Tzidkascha Tzedek Li'olam on Shabbos. One of the psukim that we say in Tzidkascha, it's called Tziduk Hadin. Instead of saying Tachanun on Shabbos, we're saying we're justifying God's judgment. Because I'll tell us that at the time of Mincha, David, Moshe, and the third, I don't remember the third, of our greats died during the time Mincha on Shabbos. David, Mincha on Shabbos, Moshe, Mincha on Shabbos. So it's a sad time. So what do? Unless there's a Yom Tov, there's a Rosh Chodesh, unless there's a special Simcha, it's a moment of sadness on Shabbos. So we say Tzidkascha Tzedek Li'olam, your judgments are Tzedek Li'olam, they're forever righteous. One of the psukim that we say is Tzidkascha Kaharei El, Nishbatecha Tahom Rabbah, Adam Ubehema Toshia Hashem. Let me translate. El doesn't mean God here, it means might. Kaharei El, your tzedek, your righteousness are like the strong, tall, high mountains. Mishpatecha, your judgments, Tahom Rabbah, are a deep abyss. Adam Ubehema Toshia Hashem. Man and animal do you rescue, you give salvation for. He said, now we understand it. What is Tzidkascha, Kaharei El? When we look at God's righteousness, we can stand and look like we're gazing at the mountain. You can stand and be awed by mountains. Nothing's going to happen to you. In fact, it's a good thing to be awed by mountains. Beautiful. We went to the Canadian Rockies. Everybody should do that. At least once, you should go. They're beautiful, beautiful. You stand there in awe, majestical awe of the great mountains. It stands there. It's imminent. It's right in your face. That's how mighty the righteousness of God is. We could see it. But you cannot stand near a deep abyss, Mishpatecha Tahom Rabbah, to understand the judgments of Hashem, how Hashem judges the world. Tahom Rabbah, it's a deep, deep abyss. It's a deep chasm. You stand, you could fall. Means if you try to understand it, you'll get lost. You can't understand it. Tahom Rabbah. Odem Behema. Sometimes it's man. Sometimes because of Behema, Toshia Hashem, because of the animal, Hashem rescues and saves humankind. This is what Bnei Israel are saying. They're saying, we don't have much schus. We lost the water. You brought the Kahal Hashem. We're sinners. We're not very righteous. So we understand the Mishpat Hashem. We understand. But Hashem, what did the animals do? You're going to kill us. You're going to kill the animals also. No one will take care of them. You'll kill the animals too. So save us, at least because of the animals. Now, I want to finish this year by telling you something. Why does the world get saved because of animals? In fact, we say this by Noah, by the Mabul. Kate's called Basar Bala Farnai, the end of all flesh, all life has come before me. Kimalaha Aretz Chamas Miknehem, because the whole land is full of Gezel, and it says Ki Hishkas Kal Basar. Every flesh was abominated, did abominable things. Hishkas means it was evil, did evil. Because I'll tell us, even the animals did evil things. That's why Hashem said, that's it. People are stealing. The animals are wicked also. The animals are doing things that are not, I don't want to say human, that are not in their nature. God said, I'm going to destroy the world. What is it about animals that Hashem wants us to learn? The Gemara tells us, if we didn't have a Rosh Yeshiva, who would be our Rosh Yeshiva? The animals. We could learn sneas from a cat. You could learn loyalty from a dog. You could learn industry from an ant. I remember once I was sitting at the Homovac Hotel, and I was just chilling. I was chilling. I was sitting by the water. Remember, I was sitting by the water. I was just chilling. And I saw these ducks walking. So in my brilliance that I was, thought I was brilliant, I told a friend of mine standing there, what are they doing all day? They're doing nothing. They're doing nothing. She looked at me and said, maybe the question is, what are you doing all day? You're just sitting there watching them. Maybe this is what they're doing something. They're doing something important. They're very industrious. It's me that's doing nothing, right? So we can learn from the animals. As long as the animals are following their natures that they were created and doing what they're supposed to do, there's a reason to keep the animals alive. There's a reason that to save us, we'll learn from the animals. You look at nature. Nature teaches a lot of important things. There's always a chance for humankind. So that's why we say, if it's not our stus, the stus of the world you created, Hashem, we still have the stus, and that's why the word is not an extra word in the Torah. As Rabbi Yudin says, there's no extra word in the Torah. Have a good day. Yes.
The case that you gave, the treasure on.
At the bench.
Right? From our perspective, who would it be?
Don't know. I don't know. It depends how the sale was organized. Depends how the sale was organized. Have a good day, everybody.
Okay.